Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Tai Show, where I interview these illustrious guests that are entrepreneurs and have so much going for them to come on and talk about their journey and how God has pulled them through. Welcome back. Welcome back. I have with me today a beautiful woman. She is an ordained elder, she's an author. She is a certified master life purpose coach and an inspirational speaker. And she also has a podcast and a nonprofit organization. She has so much going for her, and we are going to get to hear about her journey today. And her name is
Welcome, everyone. I appreciate you. Uh, and thank you, Tyree, for having me on your show today. I'm excited to be here.
you know, that was like a tongue tie. So you have so much going on. I can't wait to hear about everything and how you are going to drop some gems and nuggets for our audience here.
Yeah, so I'm just super excited to be here. This journey is seems like it's gonna be a lifetime to get here.
Mhm.
And my podcast, as you mentioned, is called Empowered to Live, and it basically shares about how do we um, walk into the purpose for which we were called. And so everything that my books, everything is centered around my coaching program is called Empowered Your Life. And so all of those things that I do is all centered around how do you get from where you are to the place where you need to be, that you know that you were ordained, created for, in spite of or despite any detours or anything that may have happened in
Mhm.
your life.
Mhm.
And so that's my primary goal is to empower, inspire, and motivate um, young women, in particular. I'm a mother of two girls, and so they have been more or less my guinea pigs over the years of how do I push you into purpose and push you into doing what I know I see the gift in you. How
Mhm.
do I push you into that place of purpose where you begin realizing it for yourself and walking into the purpose for which you were designed and created.
Okay. How old are your girls?
So I have one will be 35 in April and the other will be 34 in June.
Okay. Oh, close
Yeah.
together and grown women.
So yeah.
Why did you think it was important to push them into their purpose or have give them some insight as to what their passion and purpose is?
I would say for me, because I know my journey, and like I tell them before, I worked because I had to, not because,
Mhm.
I was doing what I did because I had to, not because I wanted to. And so you find yourself, and a lot of us find ourselves in that place where we
Mhm.
do things because we have to,
Right.
and we're not actually doing what we know we want to do. They have that quote that says that if you do what you love, then you'll never find yourself working. And for some people, the work they do is their purpose. And then for others, they're doing it because bills have to be paid.
Right. Mhm.
And they don't take the risk of saying, you know, this is what I know that I've been called to do, but I'm afraid to step out into that place because when you don't have a paycheck or you're that in between place because you haven't planned to walk in purpose where you don't know how to get there. I think for me that was the important thing. And for my youngest especially, when in 2020, when she had lost her job, pandemic happened, all that stuff happened in 2020. I had been telling
Mhm.
her for a while because she was helping me, with my business stuff. And I was
Okay.
like, I'm so good at this. Why don't you do this? Do it on the side. Do it as a hustle. And then, the pandemic and all the others kind of ripped the
Mhm.
choices out of her hand. She had no choice I mean, now she finds herself that she's built a business, which is something she's doing what she loves to do and earning a living out of it. And
Oh,
I
that's
think a lot
beautiful.
of times when we don't do that, and I told her, said, don't make the mistake I made, because I didn't know. No one told me, I was in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And we a lot of times we live in survival versus living in a place of thriving and doing
Yes.
what and walking in that purposeful place that we need to be in.
Yes.
So now I find myself. This is where we are now. I'm not sure if you're. We live in Mexico now, so we've been here.
Oh,
We're
wow.
going
Okay.
6 months that we live here. I left my job, all these things, scary place. Sold our house,
Mm.
got rid of everything,
Mm-hmm.
and basically moved to Mexico. You
Mm-hmm.
said, "Dad, you're crazy. You had a good job. Why would you do that?" But I loved the job. I loved some aspects of my job, but it wasn't fully what I wanted to do. And so, and I was working these long hours and doing all this stuff and didn't have time to do. I was just so exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally, I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
do anything. And
Yes, it happens to most of us,
right, and so
especially when we're not living our purpose, you
es-
know.
especially yes, and I found myself trying to live my purpose, but then also working that job. And then we had church stuff, and then we had all this stuff. And we had family, and my candle was burning everywhere.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Candle was lit
Definitely,
everywhere.
definitely, definitely at both ends, right?
Yes, both ends and in the middle, and every place in between,
Mm-hmm.
just trying
Mm-hmm.
to get everything in. And I think when you actually walk in the place and the purpose for which you're called, you don't live in that place outside of the margins of your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that's important for me, and for my kids to say we need to live within the margins, and because you're living in your purpose.
I like that. I like that. And you said that a lot of times people are afraid to really step out on faith because they don't want to take the risk.
Mhm,
I think that's a huge factor. And I'm sure that within the people that you work with, that's one of the issues, that they're just afraid to take a risk. Why do you think that typically is with us? That we're just afraid to step out there and leave the stability of a job to maybe be an entrepreneur, or why do you think that is?
well, I think that happens again. Fear is a big motivator, especially when you're not prepared to take the risk. So a lot of times, I saw this guy he does on Instagram, and he says, sometimes we live paycheck to paycheck, and he said he lived paycheck to hope. And I think a lot of times we live
I've
paycheck to
heard
hope.
that. Okay.
Yeah,
I hope
because
this paycheck covers all the bills.
paycheck is a paycheck to hope,
And
because
it'd be nice to have something left over.
it would be. And I think that's the issue, because a lot of times, especially for people of color, we are consumers. We spend
Mhm,
everything that we
mhm.
have because we feel like it's necessary for me to have the latest and greatest. It doesn't matter if I have to charge it doesn't matter. I need to look like I have something. And so I spend everything that I have. And then when I overextend myself, that I'm living on credit. And so you have that place
Right.
where you have no place to go, and so you do the job because of the fact that you don't have any place to go, and you need that. And so I think when you start, people, they used to tell me on my job all the time, people like, you're always traveling. And it was like, I don't understand how you do it. I said, well, I bring my lunch to work. Starbucks is
Mhm.
a treat. I do my nails myself, and I look at some of those things where, you know, like doing your nails. I made it a treat for myself, and that's something that I had to do because
Right.
I wanted to look like,
Mhm.
maintain this lifestyle, you know, where, and so when I was ready to leave, they was like, "How are you going to do that?" I said, "Well, my car is paid off. The only bill I have is my house."
Amen.
And when I sell my house, that's going to give me income. And so, and so I didn't have that fear. Even when I was sharing someone the other day, she's going to be a guest on my podcast, starting a series next month. by getting your financial house in order. So
I
this is
love it.
really actually starts this Thursday.
We need more of it, definitely.
We do. And so I was telling her, I said, a lot of times people feel like I can't save, I can't put anything aside, I can't do
Hmm.
any of those things, I can't
Hmm.
prepare myself to walk in purpose because they again they don't have the financial safety net to say I'm done, I quit. Most of us, we rent apartments or rent houses, and we're paying more for rent on a place than if we bought.
Right.
We are in financial debt, and so we work the job because we have no choice, and we have basically shackled ourselves to a job
Hmm.
because of the fact that we feel like our lifestyle needs to be a certain way.
Yes.
And I've known rich people, wealthy people who drive old cars. They shop at Goodwill. They don't go out to eat all the time.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
don't spend the money like we do. They don't necessarily have the designer stuff. And if they have stuff, a lot of times it's stuff that's given to them is not stuff they bought.
Right.
And so, we go out and it was like my $10 bag holds my stuff just like your $500 bag.
Hmm. Hmm.
And people like, oh, I love that bag. It's so cute. Where did you get it? Yeah, a lot. I got it from Goodwill. I got it from, you know. And so we have to get to that place where we unshackle ourselves from our finances. We unshackle ourselves from unhealthy people who
Yes.
are pulling you down because they are afraid. And if they don't want you to leave them, so we talked about those crabs in the pot. We pull each other
Hmm.
down,
Right.
and crabs will even pull the leg off another crab to keep him from getting out.
Hmm.
And we have that mentality, and I think as a culture that we need to break away from those things in order for us to fully embrace the calling that we have and recognize that we come from greatness. And we have the great we say we are king's kids because we belong to God, but we don't walk like we are.
Hmm.
We walk like we're still in bondage, and unfortunately a lot of us are because we've made decisions that keep us locked in bondage, and we don't walk
So
in the liberty that we need to.
yes. Okay. So as a life purpose coach, are you finding yourself using biblical principles to help your clients?
Yes, it's all faith based. Everything that I
Okay.
do, everything is about the Bible. Everything
I love
is
it.
that's all I know.
Hmm.
And so in every
Hmm.
conversation, I don't care where I am when I was working in for the government, whatever I did, no matter what corporate world, wherever I was, he's going to come up because he was in me. And so the only way for us to walk in liberty is to use the word of the liberator.
Mm.
We can't
Powerful.
do we can't do anything else. It's
Hmm.
the truth of God is what sets us free. And then he tells us not to again be yoked with that yoke of bondage wherein he has already made us free. But we a lot of times, and like Paul says, we go by like the dog to the vomit. We were like, I get afraid. I on
Mm.
my podcast a few weeks ago, we talked about breaking old patterns, and some of those old patterns that we have is that we get into a place and we're like, "Ugh," and so we run back to that place of safety, that place of bondage, just like the children of Israel when they got out of Egypt and they were in the wilderness and life got a little hard. They was like, we
Hmm.
had plenty to eat. I'm like, you did not have plenty to eat. You were crying out that you wanted to be set free, got
Exactly.
into a tough place and be
Hmm.
like, I want to go back to the place of slavery because slavery was easier for me versus that place
Yes.
of freedom where
Yes.
it may be a little hard, and there's vastness before me and I'm uncertain where I was assured of my bondage. I'm not assured of my freedom because that freedom I have choices, and
Mm-hmm.
in slavery I don't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You
so you're helping people with with these phobias that are keeping them from being
Mhm.
everything that they can be and seeing themselves as God sees them. Fear of failure, self-doubt, self-pity,
Mhm.
fear of success,
Mhm.
perfectionism. So helping what you do is, I mean, thoroughly needed. I love it, and I love the fact that you're doing this from a biblical counseling perspective.
Mhm.
And I would find it hard to be a life purpose coach and not use the tools of the Bible.
Mhm.
I would find it hard myself. I can definitely understand that. Now you're also an author,
Yes.
and I'm telling you, everyone, when she sent me her bio, it was book after book after book after book. You're like the serial author. I love it. I love it. So let's talk about your books that can be purchased on Amazon. And if you're watching versus listening on the radio, then you can see on the ticker that I always have here that her books can be purchased on Amazon. Okay. So now, one of the books is Single Parents in Pursuit of God. Okay.
Yes.
Was that the first book?
It was not. So
Okay.
becoming a woman got so actually the first book that I actually wrote was The Incredible Journey.
Okay.
And that is my bio. It's called, Shattered but Not Broken. Uh, this is basically my story of overcoming domestic abuse, child abuse, sexual assault, breast cancer,
Oh.
homelessness, so the whole gamut
Mhm.
of things. So I share that there is hope. No, so no matter where you find yourself, you can break free of the things that came to destroy you. And
Mhm.
that is
Mhm.
where the inspirational speaker comes in, because I share from that point of view. I have a talk that I do called I'm Still Standing, where I share about domestic violence and breast cancer, what to look for, and then how
Okay.
to get the help that you need in either of those spaces.
Okay.
And then becoming a woman God can use, lessons from God's female board of directors is my second book.
Okay, now the talk that you mentioned, are we able to hear that online, or is that primarily traveling and speaking in person at different events? How?
That is primarily traveling and speaking at events,
Okay.
for that, going to churches, different things like that. Um, I did see someone had one of the recordings that when I did that. Um,
Hmm.
I'm thinking about moving it to my YouTube channel, so it may be out on YouTube. So I made that maybe an option to
Yes.
move that out to my YouTube channel, so that folks can go ahead and listen to that talk that I did. I think that was 2019 or 20, maybe 21, somewhere
Hmm.
around
Hmm.
there. That um, I think my daughter had videotaped it and she posted it on Facebook. Um, and so, they're doing away with our Facebook recordings, so moving most of those to my YouTube channel, to have that out there. Yes.
Okay. I noticed that you said that you work with young women. So, what is your target audience?
So the target on so it's a kind of it's a 25-year demographic. So it's between the actually age of 25 and 50 are my target audience. They are the ones that, when we look at my insights on Facebook and Instagram, they are the ones that
Hmm.
um, are tuning in the most. There are others in other demographics, but the largest demographic is that age group. Like I said, I speak a lot to my children's age, and being able to encapsulate that audience as well as my age bracket and older, uh, as well, because like I said, it's a much needed topic. Um,
Right.
One of the ebooks that I have that I did not list on here is called Renewing Your Dreams, uh,
Okay.
Living Purposefully at Any Age. And one of the opportunities that I had to actually share that was I went to an assisted living facility. They had invited me. They wanted me to come in and talk to the residents there. And I had people in their 70s and 80s. We did actually, after my talk, I had them do a vision board. And then we had to kind of went around and talk about what it is that they wanted to see, just a little one. And, people wanted to travel, they wanted to do stuff. And you see again that you lived your life in that place of safety, not taking the chances, and now you're in your 70s or 80s,
Mhm.
and this is still
Mhm.
your hope, this is still your dream, this is still your desire, whereas you didn't take that chance when you had it, And so one of the things that I share with them is that there is still time for you to take that trip. You know, what can we do to get you to that place of going? Or one young lady, I think I call her young lady, um, she was like 75,
Mhm.
close to 80. She wanted to write a book, and I was like, okay, let's go. What is
Yes.
this book about? So let's talk about this book, and just really kind of sharing with them um, that it's possible to do. And
Mhm.
one of the people that I highlight in that ebook is she was in Black Panther, and it was her first movie. She was in her 80s.
Right.
Um,
Right. She
and
was. I forget her name, but
Yeah,
yeah, she was
see, and
in her
so I
80s.
highlight her that
Mhm.
here she is in her 80s. She's never really acted before, and here she has an opportunity this late in life, to be in one of the major
Yes.
blockbusters of all times,
Right.
that highlighted our people, and here in her 80s. And then Marseille is on the other spectrum. She's one of the youngest directors, actresses, she executive producer,
Yes.
and she just turned
Mhm.
18.
Right.
And so
Incredible.
on, wherever you are on that spectrum, it's possible to walk in your purpose. When to bring
Yes.
in that young man, he was 14. He's on Time Magazine's youngest person. He is on Science. Thing that, and so there is so much that you can do regardless of what end of
Mhm.
the spectrum that you're on. And
Right.
so it's important that we empower and encourage people regardless of where they are. Maybe, like you said, maybe you lived it safely and didn't take the chance when you were younger, but now you're in that place and you're like, I'm ready to do it now. Okay, let's do it.
Mhm.
Let's do it.
Mhm.
Today is
Mhm.
your day one. Let's
Yeah.
start now.
Yes. And we know that our timing is not always God's timing.
Hmm.
However, God's timing a lot of times is still before ours, before we're willing to make a move, out of fear,
Hmm.
like 80 something years old. And she was acting, like you said, pretty much for the first time. I like the fact that you went to, or were invited to an assisted living facility and went and talk to them, because the senior, demographic, a lot of times they feel like, oh, it's too late for me.
Hmm.
I've lived my life. This is it. There's nothing new that I can do. There's, and a lot of times we're really still here because we have not yet
Right,
fulfilled our purpose.
right.
You know, um, I like the fact that there was a young lady that that spoke up and said that she wanted to write a book,
Hmm.
and you could inspire her and help her to go to get started, to do that. That is very inspirational. We need that in all age demographics, from, like I said, the 14-year-old. I mean, these, and I work with young people for the most part, well, half and half actually, but I do work with a good hefty group of young people, and to see their faces just light up when they
Hmm.
realize what they can do. You know, in the nonprofit that I have, we took them, for instance, we took a group, and it was about 20 kids, We took them horseback riding. And
Ooh.
some of them came to me and beforehand and said, "Well, I came, I'm here, but I'm a little afraid, I'm a little scared." And then some of them, and of course, they also rode. I
Mhm.
said, "You're not leaving here, not getting on one of these horses now." They were willing to do it, but
Right.
to see them just light up like that, was a beautiful thing. And even some of those who did not come to me in the beginning to say, "I'm scared," at the end, they came to me and said, I did it. I'm so proud of myself. I was afraid to do it. I was like, oh, yes, I'm proud of you too. You conquered your fear. So it was, yeah, it was a lovely day, but it just goes to show you that really no matter how young you are
Mhm.
or how old you are, seasoned, that you are, that we are to conquer our fears.
Mhm.
And a lot of times if your purpose is not scary to you, it's not big enough.
It's not bad enough. Mm-mm. Yeah.
And we never make these, but even those of us like myself. I used to be one of those that try to plan my entire life. I'm like, I'm going to do this and then accomplish this, and that's going to lead me to here. Oh
Mhm.
my goodness. Let me tell you, no, no. When God says
Mhm.
move,
Mhm.
you have to be ready, but you would not know that if you did not sit still,
Mhm.
if you didn't ask and sit still so that you can hear what he's telling you to do. Ask him to order your steps. I mean, for me, I prayed the prayer of Jabez, and not much was happening. I mean, working, of course, and even in a profession that I enjoy.
Mhm.
But when it was time to go, I knew it was time to go.
Right.
You know, to fulfill my purpose.
Yeah, and as even this relocation to Mexico, who was an adventure in of itself. About how we got to this place, and people say, "How did you know that it was time to go?" And this was something that I had always said I wanted to do, was to live outside of the United States. I am not originally from the United States, but I've lived here. I lived in about 95% of my life. Uh, was lived
Mhm,
there, so
mhm.
it's home. It's what I know, and and so for me, but I've always had I've been in the military, and so I've lived in other countries, being stationed
Okay.
there,
Okay.
and so for me also was the fact that it was just something to be different at the pace. Like I said, the long hours, just the grind, and America has this
Mhm.
grinding culture that let's grind and
Yes.
grind and grind until you grind yourself into dust. And
Mhm.
the the health crisis there, just a whole lot of things. And so when I felt like it was time, and I was thinking about it, it was in my head. It's like, I'm ready to go. And then my daughter came to me and she was like, "You still, you've been talking about, you said that, remember a long time ago that you said that you wanted to move and that you wanted to move
Mhm.
to the United States and all this other stuff. Are you still thinking about that?" And I was just like, "Where is this coming from?" And I was just like, "Yeah." I said, every now and then it pops into my mind. And I'm like, "I'm ready to go." And she was like, "How serious are you?" Not serious right now. you know, Years down the line, let's work some more. Let's do this
Mhm.
again.
Mhm.
That playing it safe, and I'm like, my job is good, and this is the most money I made in a long time at working, and once work a little longer, do this, da 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 da. And I AARP sent me, they sent those newsletters. So I'm in the AARP, those are, as my brother says, demographic. And
Right.
they said this thing about the places to retirees to move to. It was like the next day, and I was just like,
Mhm.
"You all trying to tell me something?" So I read it,
Mm.
and the city was one on the list. And then I was on social media, and somebody was talking about, yeah, the places for where expats are moving to, and it's these great places to get away from this grinding culture of America, da 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 da. And the city was one of those.
Wow.
And then my daughter
Mhm.
comes back maybe like 2 or 3 weeks later, and she goes, "What do you think about, you know, Merida, Mexico?" And I was
What?
like, "What?" I said,
Get out of
"I
my
said,
head.
I got an email from ARP. I said I saw this reel on Instagram talking about this place
Mhm.
as well, and I went ahead and researched, places to move to, and it was just like it was just in my head, and I was like, okay, so
Confirmation.
where am I? I said, how am I going to do this? I said, well, the position
Mhm.
that I'm in at work is a hard position to fill. Da 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 da. I had
Right.
surgery. I went out,
Mm.
and the day I came back, my supervisor had sent me a meeting invite, and I was just like, I got like 1,000 emails I have to go through. We got a meeting invite. What? So I go through, and she was just like, XYZ, we're moving you to another team. So taking me out of the place where I was in, where I'm like, this would be hard if I left. It would leave people in a bind because where at the position I was in would be difficult for me to just up and move out of it. And she's like, this is what we're doing. We're going to do this. We're transitioning. Somebody's starting,
Mhm.
and we're going to transition you out and whatever, just going to help you train, and then we're going to move you out of that unit. And I was just like, okay. didn't like didn't like
Right.
that. Didn't
So
like that at
yeah.
all. I was just like,
Yeah.
what? It was just, and so it was just a series of things that happened to just let me know, because I was like, this was an obstacle for me. I was like, oh well, this happens. I don't want to do this. And then he was like, okay, fine. Let me just abruptly move you, because you're saying this is an obstacle. It's not an obstacle
Mhm.
for me. So let me move that out of your way. Okay,
That's right.
next.
That's right.
Next,
That's like our
what's
work.
what's next? And, we transitioned our retirement from one where I worked for one agency, and I had retirement in there, and then where I was working, I had retirement there too.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't have had the full access to the one I had prior if they hadn't transitioned over to it. So they transitioned over into that retirement, so I was able to get access to the funds I had in the other retirement.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so it was just kind of like God just put things in place,
And it
even to the
always
point
will.
where
Mhm.
when I went to list my house, and this is the idea, the amount that I had in mind, because I was like, this is what I need because I have to pay this off,
Mhm.
to pay the house off, and da 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 da, and I want to be able to live this much. And so we talked about what would we need, that if I never worked, what would be the amount that I would need to, at least carry me, 8 years until I could, be 65 and whatever, and then we could do whatever. And when I met the realtor, she was like, "No, I think we need to go with this amount." Da 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 da. And I was like, "I still think this is the amount we need." And she was like, "Mo, we wanted to quickly sell." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine," because she's like, "You don't have much time, especially guys, you're leaving." And I was like, "Okay, we'll bet your game." And so we listed it on one price, and we went live on Thursday. We had our first person came by on Friday. They put an offer on the house on Friday. She was
Mm.
like, "No, we're not gonna accept that yet. We have the open house on Sunday. Let's wait before we accept this offer."
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
we did on Sunday, and then Monday we had another offer, and so now we had two people fighting over the house, and that
Yes.
person was like, they're willing to go to this amount, which took me almost to the asking price that I originally said I wanted. Me
Yes.
right to
God
that
was
place,
negotiating.
and it's like, we're not ready to leave yet until this
Mhm.
date. And I'm like, we're willing to let you stay in the house until that period of time. And so, God just, He moved and He worked it out
Mm.
in such a way. So when you
Mhm.
are, that scripture says, when you're willing and obedient, you'll eat the fat of the land. And so it's not just having the willingness, but it's the obedience part that goes
Yes.
along with
Yes.
it. And so when
Mhm.
you are obedient to what God said, well, this is the time. He removed the obstacles. He was like, okay, that's your objection. Let me take care of that for you, because He knows my heart. I was like, I didn't want to leave my job in a place where if I just stepped out, they would be in a bind. And so He allowed them to go in, and they didn't. We hadn't even talked yet about the fact that I was leaving.
Mhm. Mhm.
So this hadn't
Wow.
even come up yet.
Mhm.
And so for that to happen, I was just like, okay, God, you're preparing the way for it to that easy transition. So when I told her, she was just like, because I was like, this doesn't make sense for me to move you. And I was just like, but God had a plan.
Yes.
God had a plan. And so when you are ready to walk into what God has prepared for you, and you're like that willingness and the obedience is there, God will make the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that when you hold on to that hope that God will make that way, that God will provide, I think it will make it easier for people to be able to step out, but you need to know what your purpose is. So I talk about
Yes.
knowing your why. Like what is your why? Why do you want this? What is the thing that you hold on to that come hell or high water, no matter who goes with you, who doesn't go with you, whether you're in the wilderness and things are rough,
Right.
are you still able to push on and be like Caleb, and Joshua were like, you know what, the giants on the land, but our God is bigger, and we're going to keep pushing because they knew their
Mm-hmm.
why. Their why was to enter the promised land. And so when you know for yourself, my why is the promised land that God has created for me before the foundation. I'm going to walk into it. He will make the way for you. He'll provide a provision. When
Mm-hmm.
everybody else died out, these two men continued on, and they made it through the wilderness. They made it through the giants. They made it
Mm.
through they went through all
Yeah.
of those things, and they prospered,
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that they were willing to push through and they knew their why.
Yes.
So,
Yes. So and like you say, I'm sure that's one of the tools that you use is to have is to help people understand their why. What are a few of the other tools that you use as a life purpose coach to help people find their way?
So I think the biggest thing is knowing your why, and recognizing that even though we may have the same purpose, the how we execute it is different. So you can't say, well, this is my why, but I want it like her. I want to like him. That's not who God
Right.
created you to be. And so a lot of times I think people want to be copycats of somebody else instead of
Yes.
being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to say, yeah, my goal may be to lose 10 pounds, but I'm going to do it like this person, you know, and you don't have a plan. And then also to making sure that the goal that you have, the purpose that you have is truly the purpose that God has for you. And so we want to bathe it in prayer, so let's pray about this thing. So what are those things on your heart that you feel like this is what I think my purpose is? Write those down, and
Mm-hmm.
then lay it before God. What is God? What is truly what you? These are the things that I desire to do, but is what is truly what you want from me? And I think coming to that place. So we may have a why. I want to help people. Help people how? So narrowing it down and then allowing God to give you the vision to truly see what it is that He purposed for you specifically. And He can use all the gifts. Like I said, I've gone through a lot of things in my life. I've worked in a lot of industries. And so I have knowledge of a lot of things, and so it helps that I have that knowledge, so that I can be able to point people in the right direction of, let's get started in this way. So I've walked through a lot of things that you don't have to walk through. I've made
Right.
some decisions
Mm-hmm.
as well that you don't have to, and
Mm-hmm.
being able to, to stay focused, and accept feedback as
Yeah.
to, there's like, well, this is what I want. Well, is this what you want to know what God wants for you, and being
Right.
able to know the difference, as well, is
Right.
important, that you know
Right.
the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were created to create.
Hmm.
So, on the note of being authentic, you cannot be authentic if you don't understand that God created us to create. So, if He created us to create, then we are not supposed to be copycats.
Hmm.
We all have unique gifts and talents that we were given. There are persons who deem themselves very creative, have a
Hmm.
lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas that come to their minds on based on the skills and abilities that they have. and that can gear you towards saying not being able to choose which direction you should go. So like you
Mhm.
said, it's important to write down what it is that you want to do, but you have to be still and make sure and listen and wait for God to make sure that what you want to do aligns with his purpose for you, because it may exactly not look like that. Like I was saying, you can dream and you can plan,
Mhm.
and not that you shouldn't plan,
Mhm.
but it still has to be aligned with God's purpose. And as long as it is, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Right.
Nothing to be afraid of. You were wondering, like within your job, it's like, oh, I don't want to leave.
Right.
Don't want to leave. But then he made it uncomfortable
Mhm.
for you. And that was yet another confirmation that
Mhm.
you were supposed to
Yeah.
move.
Yeah. And I think people stay in uncomfortable positions as well. Going back to the children of Israel, they wanted to go back to an uncomfortable position because it was easy,
Hmm.
and not that it was what God purposed for them.
Yes.
And talking about authenticity, I heard a preacher said that God will bless who you are and not who you pretend to be.
Mm.
So we have to be, so God's purpose for you is in your true self and
Hmm.
not in the person that you hope and pretend that you are. And so when we look at walking in our purpose, so in my purpose, not yours but mine,
Right.
and I focused in on, again, getting into that place and said, okay, so what gifts and talents do I have? I never saw myself as an author, um, but the gift had been there. I remember in
Hmm.
high school, and I used to write poetry and short stories and different things like that. And I just, oh, you're good at it. You should do this. And I was like, oh, I don't write. I'm not a writer. I didn't see myself writing anything really. And the way the first book came about was, this is in 1988, 89, somewhere. No, a lot later than that. It was like the early 90s. My kids were born. So in the early 90s. And I was homesick one day. I lost my voice. And I, God said, it's time for them to hear your story. not to not today, not tomorrow, absolutely not. I did not have a voice. I'm nothing. I just woke up with no voice. And that was the thought that I had. So I was praying in my head, and that's what I heard. And I got out to my word processor, going back and dating myself, and I just sat there and I just started,
Yeah,
and
yeah, we haven't heard the word processor in a while.
it's
I get it.
hilarious. I know. My brother had given to me come like for Christmas maybe the
Mhm.
year before, and so I'm just sitting there, and he gave me that. I got myself a printer,
Mhm.
and I sat there and just started typing, and I typed like all day long, all day, all,
Wow.
and I
Mhm.
just sat there and just typing away,
Mhm.
and the story just started coming, and I just started writing and just started writing and just I wrote. I had no idea what I would, words would just, and I just started writing, and by that night I had written the entire book.
Whoa.
Entire book. It's been revised since then, because when I did
Mhm.
it, it was, I don't even have a copy of that original one. I did the cover in Word, and I went to Kinko's.
Mhm.
Kinko's,
Uh-huh.
Kinko's printed it and stable. There was no self-publishing stuff. There was none of that stuff was going
Right.
on.
Right. Right.
So we went to Kinko's, and
Mhm.
that was it. And I was like, okay, so I have this. They had messed up the print, and so they basically gave me the books for free because they messed my print up. And
Wow.
so I had like 200 copies of this book, and I was like, okay, what I have these books, what I do with it? I have no idea why I wrote it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And so I just started giving it away. People would just say something. Went to work and it was like, here you go, here you go. Just started giving them out at work, and just
Mm.
giving them away. People was like, oh my God, I had one person that another friend of mine, the shortly after I gave it out, she gave it to a friend of hers, and she came to Christ because of it. And so
Oh,
it
man,
was
that's
just it, and
amazing.
so I give it out. I still do, even though it's been published and republished and so forth since that time. I still do. People, God laid somebody in my heart, and I just, here you go, sign a copy and give it to them. One of my events, and
Mhm.
somebody comes up, and I just feel the urge to just like, here, here's a copy, and I give it out because I don't know, who is going to touch. And then when I moved back to Virginia, I met a young lady. We were at an author event, and so she was telling someone about me when she had met me, and
Mhm.
because her um, was some of God's Wonder Woman was a thing that she had in my book is becoming God, a woman God can use, and so we had a lot of conversation about that. And so she was sharing with her friend, and she goes, "Is this her book?" And she showed it to her, and she goes, "Yes, that's one of her books." And she goes, "Oh my God, I bought her book like a couple years ago." And he was just like, and so that whole connection of meeting people who had copies. We just met at an event, and we just started talking, and she was sharing with another friend, and the friend was like, "Oh yeah, I have a copy of her book," and it's like, wow. So we never know when we write, when we do the things, and we walk in our purpose, even though it may be difficult. We don't know the life and the impact that we'll have when we actually get in our place. Pastor used to
Exactly.
say years ago, one of the ones I had, he used to say, you know, we all have a brick that we have to lay. And sometimes when we hesitate and put our brick down, the person behind us can't lay their brick. And so we're building a
Mm,
house.
I
And so
like that.
when we're building a house, we're building God's house, which is when all of us are created that purpose place. Is
Kingdom.
that we are
Mhm.
the brick, and we
Right.
have to lay our brick in
Right.
order for somebody else to come and the foundation has already been laid, and
Mhm.
so we're just layering bricks on when we walk in our purpose. And so I got to put my brick down so you can put your brick down. you know.
Wow. I love
So
it. Mhm. Yeah. I never I never thought of exactly like that. I
it's
can't make a move, and I mean, I can't lay my brick until someone else lays their brick, and someone else cannot lay their brick until I lay my brick.
mhm. Yeah, 'cause
But that allows us to build this foundation, build the kingdom of God
mhm.
together, which is what we're
Right.
supposed to do.
Mhm.
I love it. The so the first getting kind of back to your book. So the first book was The Incredible Journey.
Mhm.
Okay. So now, was The Incredible Journey was the catalyst for that book the what you had been through
Mhm.
with domestic violence, and
Yes.
now is
Child.
it do you talk about also overcoming breast cancer in that book, or is
I
that
did. So when I wrote it years ago, and then I did a revision because I ended in where when I ended it, I was just like, and the journey continues, and then I picked it up after I moved back to Virginia. I did an edit on it, and basically says, and here we go, the other part of the journey, and so we added
Mhm.
on to it now, walking
Okay.
through this breast cancer piece. How I shouldn't be here today, and but I am, you know,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
so that's the other part of I'm not giving up. I remember when I met my oncologist the first day, it was a quick thing. I had my mammogram on Friday, no, on Thursday. They called me. I had an appointment with an oncologist on Friday. Met with a
Mhm.
surgeon, and even the things was just like duh, 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 just moving so quickly. And they thought I had stayed. It had metastasized, so I had spread to my lymph nodes, all that other stuff. They didn't
Mm.
know where it
Right.
was, how long it had been going on, and the kind that I had
Mm.
was super aggressive. And so I was triple negative. HER2 positive, and you know, so the speed in which they needed to move. I remember when I met the oncologist that Friday morning, I'm in his office, and he says to me, he says, "Are you a praying woman?" Now, when the doctor
You know, you don't hear Dr. too much to say anything about praying in the
he
Lord.
said, he
Okay.
said, he said, "Are
Mm-hmm.
you a praying woman?" I said, "I am." He said, "I was going to say if you weren't, I would say you need to begin." He said, because this is right before Thanksgiving. He's like, at this point, we're not even sure if you're going to make it to Christmas.
Oh my
Hmm,
Lord.
we're a week from Thanksgiving. What do you mean?
Ooh.
What do you
If
mean
you don't mind me
Thanksgiving?
asking, how old were you then at that time?
uh, I was 44.
Oh, oh my goodness. Okay. I'm listening. We're listening.
I was 44. I thought, healthy, and I was just like, how does this happen? I don't have a family history, none of those things. And he was like, "You're a woman over 40." And I was remember saying, "Is that your final answer?
Mm.
This is what we're going with? You're a woman over 40?" And then
Right.
he's like, "Yeah, pretty much." You don't really have much of who or why. It's random. I don't know what to tell you. I was like, well, I don't do this. I don't eat these. I don't do this. I exercise. I do that. I thought I was on all the healthy
See.
things. And I said, I've been getting my breast self exams. I've been doing all these things. I go to the doctor. Where did this come from? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I advocate for women, especially women of color, because at one point, we were less likely to get breast cancer, but more likely to die from it because we were all usually misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed. And so that
Mm-hmm.
advocacy piece of fighting for yourself. When the doctor says this, I'm like, "No, I want a second opinion." No, you're actually going to do this. We have that right to ask for. Getting an ultrasound when they were like, "Oh, you just dense breast." Okay, well, can I have an ultrasound? I'm
Mm-hmm.
requesting
Mm-hmm.
one, and if and they can't deny you that
Right.
option, and so you can advocate for yourself, and so yeah.
Yeah. And we need to do our own research so we know what to
Mhm.
ask for.
We do. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so in my talk, I'm still standing. I share with that. I need to make that as a resource for people on my website because I have it as the handout that I give out. That maybe I thought to have that as a resource that people can access as well. It asks the questions, how to advocate, who to turn to, what to ask, all those different things are there. What it means for you um,
Mm-hmm.
to stand up for yourself when it comes to your own health care and making sure that you're asking, they would say, well, we want you to take this, even into anything, and my daughter, especially my youngest, is a big proponent of this. They were like, take this. And she was like, why? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
what's your reasoning behind me taking this? And like, what's this? To asking those difficult questions that sometimes we are afraid to ask. Well, they went to medical school and I didn't. They push stuff on you just because.
Right.
Um, and so we need to be
Well,
able
well,
to.
well, I don't mean to cut you off, but we know the because we know the because the Almighty God is the because.
They do tend to
Kickbacks.
use that. They do tend to do
Kickbacks.
that. So we need to make sure we
Yeah.
advocate for ourselves.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, we have to be able to advocate for our own medical treatment, and we don't know how to do that unless we do our own research as well. And of course, pray.
Hmm.
Of course, pray because God will send you people, that do know besides the doctor. When you're issued or they're attempting to issue you a medication, prescribe you something, you like you said, she asks why. Great. And then as well, what are the side effects? And not just what you tell me they are. You know what? Google, okay,
Hmm.
.com, what are the side
Hmm.
effects?
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
well, I've done that to the doctor. I was like, okay, so tell me about this medicine, and I have them pull it up, and let's go look at this thing before I go pay money for it.
Mhm.
Right here in this office, I don't want to have this, 5-second conversation where I wait for you for 2 hours and you come in and you're like, open your mouth, like, okay, here's, let's start taking this. No,
Right.
why are we doing this? Can you show me why I need to do this? What's going on with this? Why, ask those why questions. It's like you ask yourself about your purpose. and you need to know your big why. They need to
Mm-hmm.
tell you why do this, and is it a good medicine for us as people of color? Because a lot of times it's not, and so they'll put stuff because the pharmacist says, and
Mm-hmm.
the pharmacy says this is a new medicine. You need to try it on your patients. Let's see how it works, and they turn us into guinea pigs.
And guinea pigs, yes.
And yeah,
Mm.
so making
That's
sure that
another
we
whole podcast. Don't get me started. When there's a
yeah.
medical industry.
Mhm.
Yeah, my clients know I'm holistic. I'm holistic. I never say exactly you should not be taking this medication, but what I do is psychoeducation so that I'm able to tell them, hey, for instance, if say it's a client that's struggling with anxiety, okay, well, there are these what we call in layman's terms we call them happy hormones, where there's endorphins, your dopamine, your oxytocin, and there are such natural ways,
Mhm.
okay, to get, the to feel good,
Mhm.
okay, like listening to music, the aromatherapy, you know hey, take a bath sometimes instead of a shower, just to relax, exercise, go out and go for a walk, a little walk jog combination if you can do that. If not, then just walk, but go out in nature, talk to a good friend. Make sure that the people around you are not people that are negative. Keep the stresses away from you,
Mhm. That's important.
and as opposed to, oh, let me pop this pill that they says is going to help me with the anxiety, and then you look it up and it has 20 side effects.
Mhm.
No, it's bad. It's bad. Like I said, don't get me started. That's another whole podcast. However, I want to make sure that everyone knows about your website. It's www.becomingwomansnetwork.org. Okay, and then Miss Andrea can also be reached by the same name, Becoming Women's Network, on Instagram. Her books can be purchased on Amazon. And how many books is it that you have written, ma'am?
8.
Woo! Love it. Love it. I don't know where you find the time, but I'm so glad that you did, because you are reaching so many people, and to go out and even speak as well and talk to different demographics is just icing on a cake, just a beautiful thing, that you're doing. So I appreciate you coming on. I encourage everyone to continue to watch the Tai Show on YouTube, and also, but listen at tune in Apple Podcasts, okay, Amazon Fire TV. We're all over on WMEG Radio as well. Miss Andrea Rose Butler, I thank you for coming on. Okay, and do you have just one nugget, just one more nugget for our audience?
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here.
You're so welcome.
My inspiration or push for you is to do it afraid. Whatever it is that you've been holding on to, not one day, but make it today.
There you go. Beautiful. I'm not going to say anything else. We're going to end right there. Thank
Have
you
a
for
great
coming
one.
on.
Thank you for having me again. Have a wonderful day.